Posso. So let's start. Hello, everyone. Let me follow some notes. I want to share with you the enormous pride with which we received you today in this session, and for me, the privilege that I feel to welcome you. To tell you that we look forward to the post-pandemic day, then we all meet together. I hope here again in Alentejo, and we all together for better days. This is a section that commits us all to reflect together on the future of Europe, European policies, and for our part, to tell you that we are committed to continuing the much that has already been done by those who preceded us. The Aurora project allows us to take an active role in our region, using what we have from the past in building the future in a logic of continuity and respect for the legacy left, and work coordinated with everyone for the future that we want to build. We gather here in this section, and I thank you all once again for your presence. Names that we know that can be decisive, that can have decision contributions for a better future, and allow me to make a particular reference to Marcola for the commitment of the continuity that I mentioned, and also Carlos Zorrinho, my dearest friend, who has in Portugal and now in Europe a huge job done for new technologies in the digital transition and for the future and development of our country. We all are so proud of your work, and knowing that you are here with us in this project give us the certainty that we will be successful. Thank you, and thank you all again so much for being here. I wish you a good session, a good work. We are here with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I hope that you can hear me. My name is Martin Brunskov, and I'm the moderator for this high-level summit. Impressive lineup we have here today, and I'm quite excited what we're going to do. So we do have distinguished speakers from a number of institutions and parts of Europe to share with us exactly then how do we do what Mrs. Cavallera so eloquently and I think succinctly insisted in the welcome. How do we start with our histories, with our cultural roots, with the nature that surrounds us, and project the future, which is not wishful thinking, but can actually work, can actually be implemented. I'll give a few thoughts on this just to kick off the conversation here before we dive into more specific vision from the colleagues. So I will share my screen. As said, how can we underpin this transformation that the digital is not just presenting to us, but also how can we use it everywhere in all communities to reach our goals as citizens, as societies, and what is the particular approach here in Europe. My name is Martin Brunskov, and I'm chairing the livingin.eu tech subgroup. Just to say why I am here, I'm also the chair of a large network of cities and communities called Open Agile Smart Cities. This Living in EU initiative came about, and we heard in the previous session with all the mayors and with the European Commission, that to fill a gap, because there was a need to come together as communities to address these issues. So with very fond memories here is from the launch of the Living in EU Declaration, actually here from Portugal last year, early 2020, and also the prequel there in Finland during the Finnish EU presidency. And really what this initiative is about is to establish a common ground, not just in terms of technical vision or the legal frames when you buy systems, but actually across. How does the financing arrive to support also the local perspective with respect for the roots that we have? How does the skills develop that are so much needed also in the public institutions? And how do we actually monitor and measure how things are going? As I said, I'm chairing the work with many colleagues on the technical level. And it would be very easy if we could just go to the standards world, the world of norms, and just say, give us what we need and we will implement it. Well, unfortunately, this doesn't exist. Just a very confusing overview from the perspective of my home country, Denmark, where we're trying to see, okay, which standards are actually available. And just to be short, it's one big mess, at least when seen from the ground and where you need to deliver. So this is why initiatives such as the Living EU movement is so important, because that's actually where this gap gets closed. In every country in Europe and indeed around the world, initiatives are, of course, progressing. Guidance is being provided to municipalities, to regions from the national level. But it's very difficult to bring these things together. Well, that's one of the core missions of the European Union. So it is natural that there is a place where this can happen, in this case, Living in .eu. Just for those who actually care about the technical parts, I know this is not usually a concern. It's just plumbing that needs to get done. But we know now through the COVID experience, we know through the big impact of the digital economies that we are seeing, that actually this plumbing matters. So how do we connect systems? How do we understand which data is there? What are the terms that we share on? What about the integrity when we share personal data, when we unleash artificial intelligence to help us do better? What then? How do we manage these? And indeed, how do we monitor and measure? So these are key concerns that are being addressed, just to be very, very concrete. Coming to the agency of the national, subnational, and local governments, well, they can actually take many forms. And as we heard also previously, the agency of a local community or a local public authority is not necessarily tied to its size. It's possible to be, minimal in your approach, also in the sense that you wait simply for things to happen and then you go with the flow. You can also orchestrate and facilitate what happens locally. And I think we, throughout these days here in Adaptation, have seen wonderful examples of how this facilitation can actually happen in very small communities. You can also have an ambition to steer through much of the transformation, barriers, and complications that are here. Or you can really take a front seat in the realization of what you do locally, but also influence nationally, internationally as well. So just to say, there is a role for everyone. And it's important that the initiatives we take from the political level and indeed the European level is reaching and is recognizing these different roles. Not everybody needs to be realizing everything. No, we can have different roles, and that's an important part. In practice, this means that we need places to come together. I show here the ways that the network that I represent as part of the Living EU is supporting communities coming together. So actually the brand, the C by C, is meant to reflect citizen by citizen collaboration, co-design, city by city, community by community, country and continent. There's an academy where we can learn how do we actually do this in practice, and it's free, everybody can use it. There's a catalog now of emerging and increasing service offerings that can be put into public procurement so that you can actually buy what your neighbor or your distant cousin already has approved by using it. And we try to maintain also a catalog of such standards. Of course, the different roles are not just on the buying end or the local, let's say, demand side. It is very much also a dialogue with the providers, the big and small companies, and the regulators. So the partners that are coming together, and I'm showing now here the main partnership landscape for OASC, which I'm representing also, is actually a very big part of the underpinnings of the Living in EU movement, because it has to be real. It cannot be just funded with a lot of public funding, but we can bring together these actors, and that's very much what is happening. We need to find in Europe a balanced approach where we are not just leaving everything to the market, or we are not deciding everything in minute detail. That will surely not work. We're seeing already now, and these are my final 3 slides, we are seeing now how the European policies are actually beginning to listen to the diversity that is needed in the policy level. So this is an example from what is called European Interoperability Framework, which actually is not just technical, it's also cultural and organizational, it's legal, and it's semantic, coming back to the point about the different languages that we have kept hearing here today. So how can we both deliver to these very, very concrete services that we need in every community? We need water, we need waste management, and so on, but still keeping some common ground so it doesn't become unmanageable now that we have data-driven and digitally supported systems. That is now already being evolved based on the input from Living in EU and the minimal interoperability ideas. Another example, coming to artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and how we can use these new technologies. Well, of course, it would be great if we can get all the good parts without getting all the negative parts. And again, inspiration is already coming from the efforts of the Living in EU movement, with the vast membership footprint and the collaboration with authorities and the European services. So finally, we are also here, I think, to discuss, so what is the role of the financing instruments coming from different parts? And just to make it very, very clear that, of course, public money isn't needed if the market can, figure out this by itself. This doesn't seem to be so much the case, which is why there's some very concrete instruments in the new budget from the European Union being made, including what is called Digital Europe. We can maybe come back to this when discussing how do we actually make a digital transformation that not only fits the bill overall in Europe when it comes to the environment, the social, the economic, but also fits the diversity on the ground. So that's the conversation that I hope we can be having today. And with that, I would like to introduce the first of our distinguished speakers and keynote here today. So Carlos Cerino, member of the European Parliament, graduated from business management at the University of Évora, very close by here, as it were, got the doctorate degree in information management. So a very clear profile to speak both from the political level as well as the technical content level here. Since June 2014, Mr. Cerino became member of the European Parliament and head of the Portuguese delegation of the S&D in the Parliament. So I welcome you very much here and invite you to take the stage. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very grateful for the challenge of being able to participate with this excellent network of regional and local decision makers in an extraordinary exercise so well summarized in the definition of the summit's proposed. And this definition is an European summit of local and regional communities to share a common vision for a smart tomorrow. For this exercise to be a success, we have to add political will, scientific and technological knowledge, imagination, a lot of imagination, and the ability to make it happen. And this needs a close knowledge of the territories and the people who live there. And you are this knowledge. A keen sensitivity to the expectations and desires of the citizens. It's very important to understand what the citizens wish, think, and should are our feelings about our work, about our regions, and about the European Union. And a deep vision of sustainability and the need to preserve identity, diversity, and living conditions. I would like to emphasize here the importance of communities and you, the communities and their leaders, particularly those communities that are more vulnerable for geographical or demographic reasons. In a world that is increasingly fragmented politically, and we saw it in the last days, and also socially, being smart is using technologies and knowledge to make communities more resilient and stronger. We live in a time when there is a lot of talk, hopefully less and less, mostly in the developed world, but a lot of talk about pandemic waves. Yesterday, today, you are seeing a good transformation in attitude against all the process of vaccination. So I will tell you briefly, not about this wave, pandemic wave, but about other waves that are great opportunities for a better post-pandemic world, and in which projects like Aurora have, I think, something to say. Next Friday and Saturday, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, the Social Summit will take place in Portugal, as you know, under the Portuguese presidency of the European Union in the beautiful northern city of Oporto. It means a huge and fundamental consultation exercise to put into practice the European pillar of social rights. And on 9th of May, the Europe Day, as you know, the conference on the future of Europe starts in Strasbourg. So this is a very interesting triangle. The European Regions for Smart Communities, the Social Summit, the beginning of the Conference of the Future. And it's a unique opportunity to respond to the priorities that European citizens confront us with on a daily basis. No one can ignore this clamour of Europeans, because the Eurobarometer is, you saw that in Portuguese, I don't know, I will say that in English in a translation. I don't know if it makes sense in English, but in Portuguese you say Eurobarometer is like cotton. It does not deceive. And the European citizens told us every day that they want more. They want more employment. They want more security and safety. They want more inclusion. They want more sustainability. Projects like Aurora have an important place in the conference of the future Europe, in my view. It has to be a conference capable of starting from solutions to possible institutional adjustments. I don't believe in the other strategy, to begin with institutional strategies to solutions. No, we need to begin with concrete solutions, and after, to make the institutional adjustments if necessary. Aurora has to be able to show that it is a reference approach, an approach to a new emerging and challenging reality, to the second wave of digitalization, to the second wave of energy transition, to the second wave of territorial development. These waves are deeply interconnected and are marked by the acceleration and the brutal increase in the capacity to capture, transmit, process, store, and transform data in knowledge, solutions, products, and services. The spiral of technological development is astonishing. Acceleration generates data. Data generates acceleration. But in what direction? To what end? With which purpose? Technology at the service of people, or people at the service of the owners of the technology? To be ahead of the matching, you have to have the ability to imagine and make it happen. Create the data and the patterns that later the technologies, the algorithms, the learning algorithms, all of that will help to materialize. Imagination in the power, like in Paris 68. Imagining and making quality of life happen, dignified lives with decency and equity. Imagining and making happen open, transparent, and democratic societies. Imagining and making open a sustainable planet with biodiversity. To imagine and make happen a competitive economy in network with strategic autonomy. To imagine and make happen robust scientific and development systems. We need an effective Green Deal, complemented with a data deal that makes data protection in Europe an advantage. Exchanging consent of data use with security for services, products, and solutions of interest to citizens and territories. Daily in the European Parliament, I'm now working in different files, and mostly in the Digital Markets Act that I'm rapporteur in ITRO committee to put in work this data, European citizen data deal. It's so important than the Green Deal. And the two are very, very important. With green hydrogen, we will be able to bottle the sun. It's a dream that comes from I was a children, to bottle the sun. We have some technological and regulatory way to go, but it looks possible. With that, promoting green, and with that, we can promoting green and democratic and inclusive digitalization, inducing smart and voluntary relocation of people to less populated and lower density territories, creating, as a concept, very important, and I want to share with you, and creating viable cells of sustainable development that can replicate themselves, like a benign cancer. It's not easy to link cancer to something that is good, but the process is the same. Replicate themselves and become an antidote to the desertification of the territories. If I had to summarize in one sentence what I would like our common shared vision to be, and this is an European summit to share a common vision, I would choose this one: generate viable development cells with critical mass and sustainability, and multiply them through the territories, creating robust communities. This is the challenge I live with you with. I speak to those, you, that have the capability to make it happen. Our citizens, our lands, our regions, our countries, and the world can't count on us for a strong and fair recovery from the difficult times you have experienced. When I end by wishing strongly your success. I know I'm being selfish also. Your success is also my success, and the success of those who trust me, the success of Alentejo, my region. And so, my commitment is total. Good work and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cerino, for this inspiring address, and by firing up some clear ambitions. Again, recognizing that it's the people, it's the nature, it's the culture that we have to start with. So these positive cells, how can we have this modularity where everyone can take some common building blocks, perhaps, and use them in a way that is in accordance with their local goals. Thank you, and very inspiring. I turn now to our next keynote, Mr. Eddie Hartog from the European Commission. We had originally here in the program the acting Deputy Director General for DG Connect, Mr. Thomas Skoras, who, for unforeseen urgent reasons, unfortunately had to apologize himself for this address. Thank you, Eddie, so much for taking his place here and delivering the vision from the Commission of these things. So Eddie Hartog is the head of unit for technologies for smart communities. So super relevant, and the unit for this event, if I can say so. Comes from the Netherlands, a degree in political economics from Erasmus University, and has been with the Commission for quite some years, more than 30 years. And first in regional policy, then in the maritime, and now in the information society and what is the digital transformation. So I think Eddie is quite relevant to hear your thoughts here, and of course also as the convener of the livingin.eu movement. So thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Martin, for allowing me to be with you. I'm going to cut a bit short the things that Thomas would have said, but I'll give you the essence. And the reason why I can cut it a bit short is because what Carlos Cerino just presented as the EU view. Now, it comes from another institution, the Parliament, but is very much shared with what we have in mind. But I'll come back to that later. I have to thank Carmen first for continuing to host. I think when we were still organizing this, there was a slight hope that we would meet physical in Alentejo, but Unfortunately, that's not possible, but I'm really pleased to see that she kept up the ambition of the summit, but also the various cultural activities around the summit, which are sort of that convivial part of bringing us together. And I'm really impressed by the way they've put the program together. So thank you for hosting this. So on the vision that Carlos just described, it is really about that green and digital transformation that we're going through. And in that, green is the number one. I think he explained that very, very clearly. And he also explained how you need to bring the citizens in that with us, because in the end, all the problems are visible in the cities, but also all the solutions need to be found in the cities. And I think that's why it's so important that those two elements come together in our ambition for the climate neutral smart cities, where we would like to have at least 100 climate neutral smart cities by 2030. But we want to do it in an inclusive way to make sure that all the communities in the European Union bring this. And one thing that's often forgotten if you meet on the European continent, and I would like to mention that in a summit where we refer to the cities and communities, so we look at the urban and the rural dimension. I also want to look at the ultra-peripheral regions of the European Union, that through this digital capacity, we can actually reduce the distance between the European mainland and those regions and cities that we have there. And I think it is an important point also to mention at this stage. There are many digital initiatives that I could talk to you about. Martin, you mentioned yourself the communication and artificial intelligence. There's obviously the whole effort on the digital decade, which is the central piece of what we are trying to achieve. Very important is the Data Governance Act, where you can't build all the solutions if you don't have the data joined up. But I will not labor on all of those sort of elements. I think that they're sufficiently publicized and that the information is very accessible. What I would like to mention is that theme of the day. Again, Carlos mentioned it. It's that common vision for a smarter tomorrow. And to do that together, we need that common vision, that common roadmap. You know, from a vision, you need to go to action. You need to that common roadmap. And I think, Martin, the Living in .eu movement that you described, which is not my movement, it's not a commission movement, or it's actually a movement from the cities themselves, through the OASC, but also through the Eurocities, through the European Network of Living Labs, a number of other organizations. We have actually pulled this together. And for me, even though I've been 30 years in the Commission, I've seldom been in an initiative where we actually build this together, and not the traditional way of Commission laying down sort of ideas and then we follow up and execute. But it's really the action plan is together, but we have a bit of work to do to achieve that common roadmap. And common, again, also needs all the levels of government involved. That is why I'm so pleased to be on this high-level panel today, because you bring together all those levels that we need to act on, the national level, the regional level, of course, through the host. But it's really important that we do all of this together. The national governments can't do it on their own. They need the cities. The cities need the governments for the regulatory activities, for the financial support sometimes. And I'm also very pleased that on this stage, you will later on hear about the Leipzig Chart. Again, I won't explain to you what it is, but it's really that common vision that the European Union member states have put together to work to bring the cities to that next level of their evolution, both on the green side and on the digital side, and on many other sides. I mean, there's also social side. So it's a really good that we updated that Leipzig Chart, and I want to compliment the German presidency for that, and also the relay that Portugal and the other presidencies have taken to this. And that, of course, brings me to this Living in .eu movement, which is in essence cities working together, but cities accompanied by the other levels, including the European Union, where we have joined forces as European Commission, particularly with the Committee of the Region, but I also try to work very closely with the European Parliament through the Intergroup on Urban Affairs, for example, which is about urban affairs, that's true, but in a way it covers the local dimension. And of course, this has been a very successful week for us, where the Alentejo has joined, in a way, the leadership role of a number of other regions like Hessen and Murcia and Barcelona to actually join the forces with their cities, because in the end, the solutions need to be found by scaled groups of cities. That's what I would like to say. Often our projects are too small with only 10, 20 cities involved. You really need to look at a section of 30, 40, 50 cities doing that together. Martin, you explained really what this movement is about. You referred to the minimum interoperability mechanisms, which is a sort of intermediate form from the old-fashioned days of just imposing a standard through legislation. We say, no, let's find a family of technologies, as I would call it, to bring that together through these minimum interoperability mechanisms and the standards involved. Also, we've tried to bring this through by helping the cities, for example, through the Synchronicity guide. It wasn't one of Martin's slides, he didn't refer to it, but it's really to give you those accompanying documents that will help you. A number of countries have developed national guides, for example, on city procurement. Denmark, the Netherlands, with a number of other countries have developed that. It's all there at your feet. It's all there available for you. You also find examples of very practical guidance, which has been basically co-designed at the European level with cities, like we call it an organicity playbook, and that explains how citizens, business, and local authorities can collaborate. And I would add to that the universities to create that new quadruple helix model that we all know from innovation. So with that, we have supported a number of experiments through the years. You find a plethora of activities in the European Union. I mean, I come from DG Connect and I refer to the Living in .eu movement, but it's very much in tune with what we're doing in Intelligent Cities Challenge, what we will do with the 100 climate neutral cities. All of that we try to join up as a European Commission to bring all of that together. One important thing that I think it leads to the finance, and that is, how do we measure our progress? It's one of the work streams that we have developed. And it's important because someone mentioned this morning that they were the #1 digital city in the country, but how do you measure that? Is it only digital skills or connectivity? I mean, which is typically the national indicators that we use. But can we also dig deeper? What is really the level of your local digital platform that you have established? Have you developed local digital twins? And are you using the digital component, for example, for participatory budgeting or citizens engagement? I mean, all of these things we need to measure. Why do we need to measure that? Because a lot of our funding streams go through this measurement. I mean, I refer to the European semester, where we try to measure where we are and what needs to be done in each country to move on. And the digital component is very important there, but we often measure only at the national level and not at the local and regional level. And it's important to step that up, because that leads to the funding. And that's my main call on the people on the panel today, the national and regional level. You design the national plans for the Recovery and Resilience Facility. You design and propose the national plans for regional development. And so far, and we have criteria on 20% digital and 8% urban for the regional development. And so far, to be honest, the investment, the acceleration in investment in the local digital transformation seems to be going to be a missed opportunity. We look at very national type of projects, and I feel that the cities and the rural areas are a little bit forgotten. And this is unique European funding to accelerate that recovery and resilience facility, precisely because of the word resilience, because the resilience will take place in the cities and communities, and we need to invest in that now. So these are the instruments that you have at your disposal on behalf of the European Union. We hope you will use it and build with the Commission and the cities that partnership also at national and regional level. And for me, this is not about competencies or who is responsible for what. It's about really joining those forces and sustaining the digital efforts that we have started to undertake. So, Martin, I suggest I leave it at that for the moment as a first introduction, but I'm happy to come back to a number of points in the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Eddie, and for making all the links now also to several of the other speakers here. Thank you, and it's good to see now that there is really a focal point in the Commission and in DG Connect where these things come together, right? So in the technologies for smart communities. Thanks. Yes, we will come back to this. Now, I will turn to our next speaker, who is a familiar face to those who have been following this week here in Alentejo. So it's Marcos Nogueira, head of office of the Alentejo permanent representation to the EU in Brussels, has a background in mathematical modeling, so how to actually understand in a formal way these complex systems, and been working both with industrial groups and public authorities, and also is the coordinator of the Rural project, which is very much feeding into also the practical parts of what we see here, and well, becomes a focal point for the entire week here. So Marcus, first of all, congratulations to you and to the colleagues for bringing this together, for putting this conversation on the table. And I give the floor to you. Please share your vision with us.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much for your brilliant presentation, also to Eddie. Both of you were brilliant as usual, and we had our Inspire member of European Parliament, so that's indeed up to now a high-level session. Now I have to make an announcement. Unfortunately, our Secretary of State for Digital Transition is unable to be present. He was planning to come, but this is a difficult week also for the Portuguese presidency, because there is tomorrow the social summit, so I have to apologize on his behalf. Somehow I was asked to bring a little bit of the specific contribution of this event to the acquis of the Portuguese presidency, and to the, in general, to I'm trying to share my screen, so sorry, I apologize about the hesitation. I may need help on this. So, okay, so it's not working, sharing the screen. Nevertheless, there is, okay, hope. Okay, I had a presentation, a small presentation prepared for the Alentejo protocol, so that's the document or the memorandum, so the material that has been prepared during these days by the tables. We had 12 thematic tables. And why 12 thematic tables? Because around this concept of smart communities, we need to integrate several topics, and integration is really a key word. So we have to see, to study, to find solutions to make those components to work together. Indeed, that's critical aspect when it comes to the rural communities or the lower density communities, because normally the only way to make things work, to make things to get the right scale, is to integrate them. So that's why we had 12 thematic tables, but all of them under the same umbrella, the same ceiling of smart communities. There is a lot of material emerging from those tables. Those tables had introductory presentations from experts and sometimes very high-level speakers. We had, for instance, the CEO of Mobility EIT, and those tables were discussing and debating contents that were already prepared before under the scope of H2020 Rural project. And the plan is to make all those contents to be together into a document that we are naming it Alentejo Protocol. And why a protocol and not a declaration? Because this is an open document to be followed up in future, to be used for this continued discussion and continued common work for smart communities to get involved. That's a result of the summit as a starting point for that discussion. So we hope the protocol will get the name of protocol from being a mechanism or an instrument for cooperation among and across those smart communities. That's part of the Portuguese presidency priority or motto, time to deliver, so fair, green, and digital recovery. So let's see how, and we can't do everything in 6 months, so we need to see how, together with our counterparts and our colleagues from the next presidency, so that's why to use this protocol all along the way. So that the objective of Alentejo Protocol is to establish, to make convergence from the several contributions and to establish a common framework, so for the European smart communities to work together and working together towards investment. The final objective is to have an investment platform that is really able to support the infrastructures needed, the interconnection, the skills, and the services that may make the digital environment for the smart communities and cities. Why not to bring together both contents, the smart communities and cities to be more active and better serving the public, better serving nature, and better serving Europe. Indeed, this document, this Alentejo Protocol, is one more instrument for making smart communities to be relevant for achieving the digital decade. Indeed, this decade is not only digital, it's also for climate, for environment, for skills, for society in general. So I could name it the European decade. So our objective is to transform Alentejo Protocol into an instrument for smart communities to play a better and a stronger role in the European decade. So we see European decade also converging aspects related to mobility, to the new European Health Union, and of course using the methods or the inspiration in terms of methodology, in terms of process from the new European Bauhaus. So we have 12 areas of integration. Those were the 12 topics for the 12 thematic tables: smart energy, smart mobility, smart health, smart tourism, smart farming. And on the technology aspects, as mentioned by Eddie Hartog and Martin Brinskov, so much the interoperability, the critical role of interoperability. There is no co-development without interoperability, so there is no critical mass, no scale without the interoperability, and also the aspects related to data security. But there are also other contextual aspects related to the strategy of smart communities and their affirmation in the territory and also within the European space of cooperation. Those are, of course, skills, but very much culture, media, and governance. Culture, it's, of course, the capability of the smart communities to bring their own contribution to the European context. Media, because we need better media for all the publics with all the different skills and different contexts, different backgrounds to use digital and to serve digital also, and governance, because all these new ways of making the communities to evolve also need a reflection on governance. Alentejo Protocol provides a common vision for cooperation, consultation, strategic alignment, and that's a tool then for the leaders, mayors, cluster managers, project coordinators, networkers, innovators to work together and finally to be able to come with proposals for an investment platform. This, of course, together with Living in You movement, supporting Living in You, and also taking profit of the Smart Tomorrow process that was started in 2019. So the method is to keep this Alentejo Protocol open, evolving, participated, but also as a result of dialogue, consultation, convergence, and cooperation between smart communities. So much cooperation. I would like to emphasize again, Europe is a cooperation, is a space of cooperation, is a cooperation environment. So let's use that keyword for a multidisciplinary integration, horizontal, holistic view, and intersectoral cross-cutting contributions from the several smart communities for achieving cooperation, notably towards an investment platform for smart communities. So all our dreams within Living in EU can come true if more investment is available for smart communities, really to progress faster, to achieve the digital decade, to succeed that European decade, and to work together as we should do in Europe. So that's our ambition to deliver from this summit the Alentejo Protocol, but of course we are not doing it alone, isolated. We are just opening this to the society of Europe as an instrument to keep and improve cooperation. So thank you, Martin. This is a little bit of a summary of the materials emerging from this summit, and I have to apologize again on behalf of our Secretary of State for Digital Transition for his absence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcos. Again, I mean, for the frame you give for this discussion, but also for the content, so with the Alentejo protocol and the process around Smart Tomorrow, which you mentioned. We're very eager to follow that and collaborate. So thanks also for inviting to this conversation. It's exactly this, you know, making it concrete and translate, if you will, these general needs and concerns to a format and a model and systems that match our cultural setup. I turn now to our next speaker, who is excellently poised to follow up and to continue this conversation. Mr. Buchholz from the German Federal Ministry of the Interior, Building and Community, where he's Deputy Head of Unit for the Urban Development Policy. As mentioned also by Eddie before, the Leipzig Charter and the great frame that has been set up there to carry forward the torch, if you will, but also getting more and more concrete on how we can call it the triple baseline of social, environmental, and economic concerns are addressed by this new, we can say, for this millennium, cross-cutting element or concern, which is the digital. So Mr. Buchholz, member of the Urban Development Group and the German representative to URBACT and the European Urban Knowledge Network, which, as we know, have been instrumental in carrying this work forward from presidency to presidency. So thanks for being with us here today, and please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Martin Bunskopf, for this kind introduction. And yeah, it's, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to be here and to present to you briefly, indeed, what has been mentioned, the new Leipzig Charter as the main outcome of the German EU Council presidency in 2020 in the field of urban development. And I will look back onto that document, that it's quite a visionary document. Eddie Hartog already has mentioned the Leipzig Charter, and a lot of topics that you refer at this conference are also addressed in the Leipzig Charter. Yeah, thank you very much for showing the presentation. You can also yeah, move on to the next slide. Thank you so much. The new Leipzig Charter has been adopted at the informal meeting of Ministers for Urban Development at the end of last year, so not far away. This slide before, please. Thanks. This Ministerial on Urban Development has been organized back to back with the respective Ministerial on Territorial Cohesion. and my colleague Katharina Ed Menger will follow with some more information regarding territorial cohesion. Both sides, urban and territorial, are for sure closely related to each other, and that was also a main message of that ministerial. Next slide, please. There are basically two documents that have been adopted on urban development after an intensive and also very inclusive preparation process that lasted for more than 2 years. The first one is the new Leipzig Charter, a strategic document or guideline for integrated urban development, emphasizing the idea of the common good. The full title of the document is the new Leipzig Charter, the transformative power of cities for the common good. And the second document is a so-called implementation document, and that addresses the implementation of the principles of the Charter and envisages the next steps for the urban agenda for the EU as an innovative method of multi-level governance in European cooperation, but that's a different story, not for today. And on this slide here, you can see the new Leipzig Charter in a nutshell, I would say. The Charter unfolds along 5 key principles of good urban governance, and you can see them in the top left column of this graphic here. And with this principle, urban policy for the common good, as the core principle of the Charter, which is also the underlying principle throughout the whole document. But there are also other main principles like the integrated approach, participative approach, multi-level governance, place-based approach, all these things that are related to urban development. And these principles are applied to the 3 dimensions of the European city, as the Charter calls it, are the just city, the green city, and the productive city. And these I will come back to these 3 dimensions in a minute. And there are also 3 spatial levels of the European city that the Charter highlights. It's a neighborhood level. It is the local authority, so the whole city, in its specific national context, which varies from member state to member states, and the functional urban area that also links the new Leipzig Charter to the Territorial Agenda again. And at the bottom of this graphic, you can see these 3 pillars that relate the empowerment of cities. They show what cities need to deal with current and future challenges to transform. So this is the whole picture. And the next slide, please. Here I would like to highlight only a few of the main elements of the Charter. And one very specific feature is this model of the 3 cities, just, green, and productive cities. Also, quite similar to this well-known triangle of sustainability. The new Leipzig Charter also embraces digitalization as a cross-cutting issue that influences or affects all of these 3 dimensions. And what's also crucial in that respect is here that these dimensions shall not be seen as silos or boxes, but they are absolutely interlinked between each other, which is, of course, the core idea of integrated urban development. And what is behind these keywords or dimensions, you can see it here, It's the just city. It's about to ensure equal opportunities for all, equal access to public services, affordable housing, socially balanced, mixed neighborhoods. Under the green headline, we have everything addressing climate change, global warming, high quality urban environment, of course, energy efficiency, reduction of CO2, and also, for instance, the shift to sustainable mobility. And under this headline, productive city, the Charter refers to the productive, innovative environment for cities. It is the economic and financial basis of the city. The Charter refers to this shift towards digital, service-oriented, low-carbon economy that also creates an opportunity for cities to promote a new mix of living, working, recreation, education, and thus also avoiding too much transport within the city. Yeah. Then the next slide, please. And this is also unique to the new Leipzig Charter, that it does not stop at emphasizing general principles, but it also addresses the question, what do cities need to be capable to answer current and future challenges? And empowering cities to transform is the headline here. Support from various levels are necessary, national level as well as European level, to ensure an urban governance for the common good. And cities need, therefore, legal framework conditions for sure, funding programs or a stable financial basis, skilled employees, that's absolutely relevant, and also the steerability and shaping of infrastructure and public services like digital networks. And when it comes to national urban policies, the Charter contains an appeal to the member states to continue or establish national urban policies. And main elements here are the exchange of experience, offering a platform of dialogue, and also national funding programs, incentives for innovation and experimentation. These are those elements. And the Charter also recommends to focus especially on shaping the digital transformation. Cities shall be the driver of digital technologies and should ensure that digitalization works for all of us in society. And this, to name only some of these messages of the Charter. So what are the demands on the European level? The Charter underlines the role of the urban dimension of cohesion policy, and I can only underline what Eddie already has highlighted here. I think the new cohesion policy package for the coming funding period, now we really have a great offer that we should all can take advantage of for our cities. And this is also highlighted in the Charter, and the Charter also is mentioned the coming European Urban Initiative, and also the relevance of this exchange, this Europe-wide exchange on knowledge and expertise. And finally, the ministers call to continue the urban agenda for the EU. And this is already then, again, the link to the second document adopted at that ministerial, this implementation document. And that, again, paves the way now to the next highlight of the intergovernmental cooperation on urban development in Europe. So it's history never ends. This is that will be the next ministerial on urban development under Slovenian presidency at the end of this year, when also the next generation of the urban agenda will be shaped. And that initiative will also contribute to, on the one hand, fill the principles, ideas of the new Leipzig Charter with life. And they are also, of course, connected to this EU-wide priorities, digital and green transition. And at the moment, we are indeed in the midst of this preparation process for the next ministerial, in the framework, of course, of the trio presidency, together with our Portuguese colleagues and our Slovenian colleagues, which is also a really great pleasure. So this was my brief insight into this new document, New Leipzig Charter. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buchholz, for this extensive overview. I remember fondly the discussions we had during the Finnish presidency in the group also. I mean, anticipating what should go forward from, this focus that the Finns, they had on some, how the digital would hit the ground, and then how to project that into the new Leipzig Charter. And we see now the result. Very, very good. And I think very encouraging to see also that the actually, I would say, solid foundations in Europe are being made. So it's not just bits and pieces that are flying around. No, it finds ground. It gets linked to the established logics that are there. And very nice to see how the presidencies chain and follow this under the urban. Thank you very much for the update. I will give now the spotlight to the German colleague, Dr. Ed Menger, who has worked in the Federal Ministry of Interior as head of unit for spatial development, territorial cohesion in Berlin, and now is head of unit at the permanent representation of Germany to the EU, with a responsible for many things, including urban and territorial development, and I might add data protection. So thank you very much, Dr. Ed Menger, for joining us here to share your view also how this is not just the urban perspective, but really the cohesion perspective we are addressing here. The floor is yours.
Hello. Good afternoon. So I hope you can all hear and see me. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and thanks a lot. Yes, I start my camera. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to give you a little insight also in what the German presidency has done on the more territorial side of things. So we've actually during our presidency, but of course that was also a process which was building very much on work done with previous presidencies, and which will of course also continue into the current and the coming presidencies. Contributed to having a new version of the so-called Territorial Agenda of the EU. This was very much a parallel process with the new Leipzig Charter. Tilman Buchholz has also kindly several times referred to that in his presentation. So these are really two sides of one coin, and I think we've really tried to think this whole process in a very holistic matter and in an integrated way, and to say that urban development but territorial development as such are both very much linked, and the challenges also have to be addressed in all types of territories. So I'd really like to stress the fact that it's not like the urban agenda and the Leipzig Charter is about cities and the territorial agenda is about rural areas. No, not at all. The territorial agenda is very much about all types of territories, functional territories, and then of course also I would even say with a particular emphasis on smaller and medium-sized cities in a more rural context. So the Territorial Agenda was also adopted at this back-to-back ministerial meeting at the very end of November, beginning of December last year, which should have taken place in Leipzig, but of course it was an online meeting. So there again, you've seen this parallelity. The Territorial Agenda was adopted by the ministers responsible for spatial planning in the different member states. So this is a commitment of the ministers for spatial planning. And I think it's important to emphasize this because the approach into the Territorial Agenda is very much this planner's approach about in how to organize your space. So I dare to say that this document is very much about how do you bring the digital and the green transitions to the different types of territories. What we aim to do with this document and what we aim to address basically is the idea of dealing with disparities between territories and regions and to deal with the challenges of unsustainable developments which have already happened. So to turn that into the positive and to turn that around, what we want to do as a good contribution to establish the principles of balanced and sustainable development for all territories in the EU, and I should say not only in the EU but in Europe as a whole. So this is of course very much about the idea of territorial cohesion. This idea again of a balanced development of the whole territory. So that is the idea of cohesion, and how do you then organize this idea in a given territory. And it's very important to think about this idea of zooming in and zooming out, to say this is something which we think for the whole European territory, but we also think at a very local level. So we also of course talk very much about a place-based approach here. So what does the Territorial Agenda do? That's just a few buzzwords here on this slide. The Territorial Agenda, of course, analyzes the different challenges which regions and territories are facing at the moment in Europe. And perhaps not very surprising in a conference like this one, of course, it addresses very much the challenges of digitalization and of climate change and climate change adaptation. And then it formulates these so-called territorial priorities for Europe. And there you can find well, basically two main sets of principles. One is about a just Europe that offers future perspectives for all places and people. And so there again, you have this idea of balanced development and of the putting that to the functional regions. And one aspect we also particularly focus on is to do these developments cross-border. As spatial planners, we really do not so much think about and along national borders, but we think about integrated territories, which actually may very much stretch across borders. So we have an emphasis on that one in here as well. And the other one, of course, is the Green Europe. And here we talk about reconciling the ideas of healthy environment, circular economies, and sustainable connections. So that's so much for the principles. Now and then again, as also in the Leipzig Charter, and as Tilman Buchers has also just emphasized, it's very good to speak about these principles at the European level, but what we really need to do is to implement them at the level where they actually belong to. And that is, of course, everywhere in territories. It can be at the very local level, it can be at regional level, it can be, again, in cross-border territories. But we very much put this emphasis on saying these principles really need to be applied on the ground. And what was actually new here for the Territorial Agenda, as I said, it is a renewed document. There were prior versions from 2007 and 2011. Now, this time we also have a kind of second chapter on the implementation. And more than that, this time we have actually agreed on 6 pilot actions. I just enumerate them to you there on this slide. It's a pilot action. There's one about lagging regions. There's one on region-focused territorial impact assessments. There's one there, again, you have the cross-border issues on cross-border spatial planning. There's one on climate action in alpine towns, one in a broader sense on climate change adaptation, and the 6th one, which is for some inexplicable reason not on this slide, on the impacts of sector policies on balances or imbalances between regions. And I'm very proud to say that actually it was today that these 6 pilot actions were now actually kicked off. So they're all working on the ground with, as I said, a kickoff today, still hosted by the Federal Ministry of the Interior, online again, what a pity. So this is really the new dimension of it, to say that we actually take these actions to the ground, and that we have these 6 pilot actions which demonstrate how that will work in practice. Now, these actions all work with partnerships which are also all across Europe. They have a kind of lead partner, and then work within a larger partnership. This idea of a lead partner and a partnership is, of course, very much inspired by how Interreg works, but is definitely an inspiration for it, but not so much a source of funding. If you were expecting that these pilot actions go with a lot of money, then I have to disappoint you. They're basically running on their own steam, on own available funding. And this is also, I think, something I need to emphasize, that with this territorial agenda, what we want to do is to provide, well, first of all, the principles of balanced development, and now these ideas with the pilot actions, and inspiration to hopefully a lot of other initiatives which will take these principles to heart and implement themselves in their own strategies of development. So as far as the funding is concerned, there again, I very much join what Tilman Buchers has just said about the Leipzig Charter and the urban initiatives. We very much hope that with this we provide inspiration to then have projects in the available funding instruments, which is, of course, the structural funds, also, of course, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, but also other programs. Why not the Horizon program? Why not what you can use for digital transition? The main idea here basically is really to try to implement these principles in the existing programs. And also, as Tilman was saying, especially in the structural funding, the new regulations, which are also just basically finished under the German presidency, this idea of a more integrated development and of a more place-based and more territorial approach have very much come to flourish. So I think there's a lot of ground actually to build projects on the available programs. So what we really aim at is to inspire a lot of projects which are based on dialogue, on partnership, on cooperation, on integrated development, on cross-disciplinary cooperation, and basically on trying to reconcile different challenges, approaches, and interests on the ground in a given territory. So that was my sort of, I hope not too long overview of what the Territorial Agenda aims to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ed Menger, for this deep dive and also for the precision view on how the territorial, if I may say so, the planner's view on these complexities are unfolding. And if I may tie it back to what Mr. Buchholz presented in the overview of the new Leipzig Charter, it's actually, so the 4 areas that was presented, I think, in your last slide, actually immediately linked to the 4 of the 5 pillars in the livingin.eu, where the 5th is the digital. So I think what put together what you present from the German side and you know this precise perhaps snapshot in the evolution of the policies around the territorial and urban development when the digital is hitting us. Well, we are seeing how some parts are quite well understood with the traditional planner's view, whereas some parts probably need, you know, to be matured more. And I think here, especially of the digital part, what is the role of data here? So it's very nice to see this not being treated, you know, in isolation, but in integration with the normal policies. Very, very encouraging. Okay, so now we go even further in the line of presidencies here. So to the Romanian, I remember also well the conversations that were held in Bucharest, mainly during the presidency, also leading up to this and what we talked about in Finland. So I invite, and I believe this is a recording, the permanent representative of Romania to the European Union, Dr. Orobescu, has a PhD in international economic relations and very closely connected to Romania's EU accession, and since 2015 leading the permanent representation to the EU from Romania. So thank you very much, and let's have the address here.
Smart Communities European Summit. It's an honor to address you today. Let me thank the organizers for to the Smart Communities European Summit. It's an honor to address you today. Let me thank the organizers for their kind invitation that provide me with this opportunity. Albeit from a distance, which I regretfully could not avoid due to the previous engagements, I'm delighted to join your topical debate. The current pandemic and the multidimensional crisis it triggered has particularly challenged us all to think smart, with this challenge becoming even more complex when talking about communities. What does a smart community mean? What is it aimed at? And how to achieve it? First of all, it needs to be said that becoming smart involves a complex approach that takes into account digital, resilience, climate and health solutions, all working towards a sustainable growth path and all to be citizens focused. In my very brief intervention today, I will only highlight the relevance of the digital dimension. Because for my country, Romania, digitalization is a priority of utmost importance. It goes without saying that digitalization is a key component of the development of smart communities. The innovative solution provided by the digital tools improve resilience and build on local strengths and opportunities. Leaders at all levels of administration need to focus on developing appropriate digital solutions that respond to the needs of their citizens, such as multimodal intelligence transport system, emergency assistance in case of accidents, disaster, health crisis. Furthermore, targeted waste management solution, intelligence traffic management system, smart urban planning application, as well as smart energy solutions are all priorities. At the same time, it is crucial to respond to increasing wave of cybersecurity threats. These type of threats might include disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks on infrastructure or with the potential to cause physical damage or unlawful access to personal data, stealing industrial secrets or weakening social cohesion. It gives me great satisfaction to remind that soon digital communities will benefit from a valuable source of support to help improve their response to these challenges by enhancing their security capacities. The future Cybersecurity Competence Center, to be seated in Bucharest, will bring this valuable help to digital communities by supporting their local authorities and companies to more effectively respond to cyber threats and by providing that with more secure solutions. Also, the center will offer financial support and technical assistance to their cybersecurity startups and small and medium-sized enterprises, ensuring they are connected to potential markets and thus attracting investments and developing digital skills. This way, local talent can be retained in place together with enhanced visibility towards potential investors and new business partners. To conclude, I encourage you all to be engaged and provide solutions, as local communities are indeed laboratories of idea and smart solutions. I wish you fruitful panel debates today. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the ambassador for the address here and for taking the time. Again, we see the strong links, and those who have been part, remember the discussions, and we anticipate now even more. It's good to see that also the rotating presidency function can actually give different voices also to the challenges that we are addressing. So now I turn to Marcola, the president of the Helsinki region and a pillar in European regional and local policy in a very long time. Thanks for being with us, Marco. You have so many hats. Maybe you want to give a short overview of your affiliations as you find relevant here. But thank you for being with us, not in Portugal, unfortunately, but I'm assuming from your home in Espoo. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, and great to be here. And of course, we all would have liked to be in Portugal, especially looking at the lovely brochure. And I know some of my colleagues from the Committee of the Regions, they are there today in a social economy, social Europe major event. But let me start this by focusing on what Martin, you said in the beginning. How do we make our shared visions and joint plans to become a reality? What I bring to these different very good presentations, I want to look this from the city and local level perspective. I'm representing as well the European Committee of the Regions, where I'm the former president and now one of the vice presidents. I'm the newly appointed ambassador for climate and energy in the new chamber within the Covenant of Mayors. And on that, so I want really stress heavily that we need to focus now on the real life practice. And let me start with just a couple of figures here, because the Commission 2 months ago published a new EU climate adaptation strategy. And when Frans Timmermans had the press event of that, so he highlighted that the economic losses already caused by extreme weather conditions, they amount already now to 12 billion euros annually. So think about 12 billion euros annually. What else could we do on science and innovation on that? And then Mr. Timmermans continued that they will increase to at least 170 billion euros per year if the global warming reaches 3 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level. So this is a real alarming figures, especially when we now think about the how much debate in Europe in all member states is about the recovery and resilience financing 750 billion and so on. The other figure group is that local and regional authorities are responsible for more than 70% of the climate change mitigation measures and up to 90% of the climate adaptation actions. So the policy when tackling climate, when another societal challenges, so it is really in the hands of the local level. That's why we, the Committee of the Region, we want to and have an important role to play in the official EU decision-making processes. And we've drafted our official and delivered our official opinions on the Leipzig Charter. On the digital, today we have the plenary ongoing. There we are this evening approving one of the cornerstones on the digital future of Europe, and so on. So this is really important. Now, when we think about what all the speakers today have talked about, so green and digital, I stress heavily that they need to go hand in hand. Martin, you showed in the beginning nice graphics where there was the Horizon Europe and then the cohesion funds, and there was something missing in the middle. You integrated these two with the digital Europe, and this is it. So, and all those Horizon Europe, cohesion funds, digital Europe, so now they are instruments to move ahead with climate measures, but as well with building the new sustainable growth potential for Europe, and as well the well-being welfare societies. Coming myself from Finland, so and especially Helsinki region, which is the most innovative region in the EU according to the latest EU scoreboards, innovation scoreboards. So I want to stress that we have the instruments, EU instruments, But the money, most of the money needs to and is there on the local level, public and private. So it's not only that we have nice national governments to saying what should be done and giving part of the money, but it's the taxpayers' money and private industries, large and small, their financing instruments that we need to use. And from this perspective, this living in .eu, so it very nicely integrates these. And to my good fellow Eddie there in the DG Connect, so let's move to action now with our joint, what we have with the Committee of the Region and DG Connect. So this broadband. So we need to come back to some of those, what we approved as an example in the Bucharest Digital Assembly and in many other occasions. And for this, the European Research Area should not be only about creating new scientific knowledge and getting the new knowledge to innovative use, or the Green Deal should not be only about tackling climate change and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, they are that above all, but they need to be much more. And on this, so I stress heavily, so it's about mindset. So that how we, the people, decision makers and our local industries, how we operate with our communities and the instruments making living in .eu real reality. It's about mental improvement to encourage the bottom-up city development. The city here, of course, it does not mean only the authorities or decision makers. It's the city with all its citizens, with its industry, with all its schools and universities and others, all different communities. And the city needs to operate as the driver for sustainable growth and systemic transformation. All the sustainability dimensions need to be integrated. And there I mean especially all those, I always say 4: economic and ecological, social, and above all cultural. Cultural including all elements of culture, heritage, but skills, abilities, learning. Historically, social dimension has included culture. That, however, needs to be brought. This culture needs to be brought to the front. And let me highlight this also, that this happens, as already said by the German presidency. So it's a place-based, and it's above all, it's the ecosystem. People of the ecosystem have, and they use their networks, they work together within the built environment, kind of creating this all as a knowledge co-creation center or a hub. For example, in our case, in our region, the case Aalto University campus with its surrounding areas, city areas, it's where the city, we started to call that as a core area of the Espoo Innovation Garden, using the metaphor of gardening. So how we can move ahead in the mentality. The area totals around 5 square kilometers, companies having half of the value of Helsinki Stock Exchange, very high-tech resources and so on. So it's really something which is gardening the thoughts of the people to become really game changers. Nature is there close by, the Baltic Sea is there, the Natura area is next to the university campus and so on. And on this, so we need, now we are starting the new experiments with the 5G and artificial intelligence solutions. So kind of creating a unique sustainable innovation park under the title Smart Otaniemi. There's a lot in the net already on that, integrating new energy development on that. So a lot of these pioneering activities happen there. And this is what we are doing more within the Committee of the Regions as well, so that we just 2 days ago, we decided to launch a special campaign on Green Deal going local. And that means so that we need sustainability and climate roadmaps everywhere. We need going local action plans, and we want to encourage this to be really the change, kind of changing the mindsets, empowering the local level policymakers, but citizens as well. We want to accelerate the investments, and especially investments from the private sector, because that's the only way to get enough of the investments going on. And we want to support strongly that there's a need for more and more European partnerships between regions. And we want to prepare to the Glasgow COP26 to show the visibility of the work that cities and regions are already doing. And let me just conclude that because in the brochure it's talked about the future lab. So that brought to me that I need to say that there is, especially in Finland, when we during not the previous presidency, but the one more than 10 years ago, we formed and launched the Living Labs initiative. So the most impressive forms of inventing the unique future, it happens now on the innovation, on these innovation-focused ecosystems. Typically, they are kind of created together with the people, forming kind of a small village type islands within the university and other similar campuses. It's especially important that the young people are there. They dominate, but they dominate this with the development, with their creative and innovative mindsets, with their openness, with their startups, and creating these new learning environments for experimenting, demonstrating, rapid prototyping, sharing, and scaling up, because that is needed all around Europe. Living labs, future centers, future labs, innovation camps, as well as events like Slush and hackathons. They have been forerunners on this movement, but this is what we need in Europe more and more, and that's why we, the Committee of the Region as well, we launched this Green Deal Going Local initiative, and want to make that, get all our members, 350 mayors, regional presidents, to put the activities forward in their own cities and in their own region. So this is the future, and I very much congratulate Portugal. You have taken so strong initiatives and supporting this mental development in all parts of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marco, for those inspiring words, and also I think for highlighting the role of the next generations. I mean, what we can do here now is set up the platforms for others down the road to do things. And when I look at the program here that Marcos and the colleagues have put forward as part of the presidency, I actually see this very, very large scope, including reaching to some of those pointers to the future. May I invite our distinguished speakers to leave a final thought here for the future work on the next steps. There's a lot to do. Perhaps, Eddie, a short reflection here for the colleagues, for the audience, for the future work.
I really think, Martin, what we've seen today, both in the previous panel and this one, is this really desire to do it jointly up. I think all the instruments are there. We have the willingness. Someone mentioned the mindset. It's this value of depth thing that I think that you mentioned in your first scale, that we are in there. DEP is, you mentioned the DEP. I have about 60 million for 80,000 cities. So I have probably the price of an iPad to help the city. So the digital program is not going to cut it. I think we have the joint will, we have the joint means. Now we need the joint efforts to actually boost the initiative that we started, and then sustain it also in the future and bring it to fruition.
Thank you so much. Mr. Buchholz, any thoughts from your chair now, having been so close to the development for so long time, also looking to the future?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I can absolutely agree to what Eddie had said. We now need a joint effort, joint action. We need to translate all these objectives now interaction on the ground. And one aspect is funding. Not the only one, but one aspect is funding. And as I have already said, I think the framework we now have is a perfect environment, and we really should make use of that. For integrated urban development, I think the framework conditions never had been better than now for the next funding period with this new political objective 5, this truly integrated objective with this minimum earmarking of 8% of the whole ERDF budget for integrated urban development. And at the moment, we are working on the partnership agreement as a first step in this whole cohesion policy cycle. And we included the principles of the Leipzig Charter also there in that agreement. And now we hope that for instance, our lender in Germany will translate that also into the operational programs, and that this might be really an excellent opportunity for cities to make the best use of the money for the future. Thank you very much.
Very good, thanks. And Dr. Ed Menger, if you want to complement from the planning perspective, perhaps, or the territorial perspective.
Yeah, just very briefly, because of course I completely agree with what Tilman just said there. Maybe on a very rather more personal reflection note, I was really fascinating what Marco was. We were just explaining about this nature university in Helsinki, and I think that's kind of symptomatic for what approach we need. So basically, people researching in a natural environment, thinking about the preservation of that natural environment, but then also thinking about the climate change element and using the new technologies. So I think that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're trying to talk about. We need to do it in a specific place, and we need to accommodate all these needs of preserving, of course, a livable and likable environment in which you want to be, and then still offer all the services to your local communities and to your wider communities. And so I can only add to what just said, and I really, really hope with the funds available, we will be able to have a lot of projects of that kind, and then always, of course, also in a cross-border and mutual learning spirit, because I think that's honestly one of the best things we can really do in Europe, is to keep people talking. And for a while, I think it will be like this on screens. But of course, we all very much hope that one day we will all meet in person again, which, as we all know, is even more creative if you can do it in person. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that sentiment. And yes, then, I mean, the public funding being the bridge until the market kicks in, because, of course, as we also know, there is not enough public money in the world to drive this. It has to be integrated in our social, environmental, and general economic development. That's clear. Back to the productive part in the new Leipzig Chart. Marco, last reflection before we
yes,
get the floor to Marcos.
thank you. So why not stress more that, let's say, something positive of this COVID-19. So it's that we have learned to collaborate more virtually as well. Face-to-face is more important than ever, but we can collaborate as well with many, many ways. So digital is much more now embedded in the minds of the people, but in the processes as well. So let's work from that, so that to build the new normal after this. And that's where we need all these EU instruments, because what we've seen when the member states together join their forces, when the cities are implementing immediately, so enormous efforts or results can be achieved. Now we need this on the climate and on this building the sustainable growth. So sustainability is the keyword for all communities, including businesses, people, individuals, and so on. So that is opening something for us, and I especially want to say that for Eddie and the small amount of what you said, so that can be used as a kind of initiator, encouraging cities and local level to move to that. We've done already so much together. Now when we integrate EU, the New Horizon missions, where the pioneers, demonstrators are needed, when we integrate that, what has already been announced last fall, the ERA hubs. So that is how the cities are using the knowledge. We need new knowledge. The universities play a crucial role on that, and industry as well. So let's start using this in an integrated, sustainable manner. Thanks.
Eddie, did you have a comment shortly to that?
Oh, I just put my thumbs up because you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole idea is to leverage this, Marco, because in the end, the EU can't fund everything. And maybe to Tilman and Katharina, you mentioned the cohesion fund, but it's the national government that sits on the recovery and resilience funds. So maybe a slight hunch to let's say, implement the Leipzig Charter with the billions that you've been given there.
Thank you. Well, a point, I probably we follow this space. I noticed that actually some of the regional development funds were not used. So actually, I mean, it's not always that we lack political commitment or we lack money. Even the investment side is crazy to invest because interests are negative and so on. So it's actually the actual making it work so that we can invest, so that we can get the innovation. It seems to be the difficulty here, but good to have political will and financing in place. It helps. Very good. Marcus, I give you the floor back, and also to Mrs. Cavaliera to finish off the session here, if you will take the floor. I hope I'm following the program. There you are. We don't hear you that yet, but I'm sure we will in a second when everything is. Now we hear you.
Because my mask got. Oh my God, this direct. Apologize. Okay.
The floor is yours.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, very well. We can hear you and we can see you, and the sun is shining.
Yes, the sun is shining now, and we have a window, so on that side so you can see it. Okay, nevertheless, it was really an interesting session. I have to thank very much for all who did contribute, and a warm thank you to Martin. And it's really, you did very well, as you always do, the first intervention and the moderation. Thank you also for Eddie, because it's so important to have your enthusiasm and your support and your advice and guidance. And we all know that, but that's important to say it. And thank you also especially to Marcola. That's very refreshing to learn from you, to hear from you, to try to follow you. So that's really special to have this opportunity of having you addressing our audience, our online audience, and coming to our summit, even if remotely. But just let me tell you that you are the most welcome, I hope next year, to Alentejo, so you can get a little bit of this sunshine and to see those pictures for real. But thank you for saying that's time for action. Indeed it is, and also you put it very well, Martin. You said it's the time to make it happen. Indeed, I hope that Alentejo Protocol is an instrument to help to make it happen and to help to really get to action. We see investment as critical. That's why we are so much focused on the investment platform and those aspects. And as Eddie was saying, we can't just be waiting for money to fall from this. It's not enough. We have to act, to coordinate, to find partners. And indeed, the investment platform, I hope, is an instrument for that. And we see Alentejo Protocol also as a way to put on paper the mechanisms to get it done. That's very good and indeed reconforting to know that all this commitment about continuity throughout the several presidencies. I have a little story to tell about it, because in 2007 it was the German presidency and Leipzig Charter, And here in Alentejo, we did a follow-up session, a follow-up workshop that actually was a quite important one, because we had here most of the project coordinators, the big project coordinators, indeed to see in practice, again, time to action, then how they could put in action those principles from Leipzig Charter. So it was some sort of cooperation on continuity between German and Portuguese presidencies. And now, by chance, you did continuity very well, because you took Leipzig Charter again, and you did a refreshment to that, and you have the new Leipzig Charter, and we are here in Alentejo today discussing it and finding ways to make it happen and to make true that statement, that's time to action. So I hope it will be that continuity will be the case also with the upcoming Slovenian presidency, and also the French presidency, which is following up the Romanian presidency with the Summit of Cities and Regions. That's the way to build Europe, is respecting each other, and the way to respect the work of each other is indeed to have this continuity, not only among presidencies, but very much about everything we do together, projects, policies, instruments, platforms. Okay, let's make it happen. It was the words headed. Thank you for that. So now to close the session, we are going to have our Vice President, Carmen Carvalheira. Carmen, please.
Hello again. So we asked for a window to share with you our wonderful sun a little bit. Just to finish, to say only two things. It's the importance you all mentioned here, the importance to work at an European level, but considering the local levels. For this, in fact, we really need to be very well coordinated, we all. But to this, the very importance of data, of very good data, and data structured in a way that we can really compare between our difference. We can compare considering the differences, the characteristics of local characteristics. If we can structure very well our data, coordinating this data, we can identify very well the difference and where we need still to work more and more to achieve our objectives and Europe with a very good digital transitions to all, achieving all. It's the importance that we want to reach. So thank you all again for your presence. Let's work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. I go back to the Committee of the Region plenary now.
Bye-bye. All the
Bye.
best.